Leading health experts have called for drug use to be decriminalised, claiming that the war on drugs has failed. The Royal Society for Public Health and the Faculty of Public Health say that personal possession and use should no longer be illegal, but they still support criminal charges for dealers. Well, joining us now is Steve Rolls, who's a senior policy analyst for Transform Drug Policy Foundation, which campaigns for drugs to be regulated. Steve Rolls, thanks for joining us. You were just telling me just now that you were involved in the writing of this report, so explain to us why you think this is the way forward.
Well, the evidence shows very clearly that a criminal justice-led approach to drug use is expensive and simply doesn't work. Punishing people and criminalising users hasn't historically deterred millions of people from using illegal drugs, but it does, as the report shows very clearly, create a whole series of public health risks. It alienates people from public health messages, it frightens young people from accessing services, and it just doesn't help. And so what they're recommending is to reorient away from a punitive criminal justice approach towards an evidence-based public health approach. It's very important that august bodies like the Royal Society are saying this.
What is the difference between decriminalising and legalising drugs? What does it mean practically, and what impact could it have? Well,
decriminalisation, as laid out in this report, specifically is around ending criminal sanctions for personal possession of drugs and use. So if you were caught, you wouldn't get a criminal record. You might still get some civil or administrative sanction, a bit like you would for speeding. So you might get a fine or a treatment referral, but you wouldn't get a criminal record. And the criminal record is one of the major problems because it's very stigmatising. If you get a criminal record, that is actually a very serious sanction. If you're a young person, if you're already vulnerable or marginalised individual, it makes getting work harder, it makes getting housing or personal finance. You can't travel to the USA. It's actually a very serious burden to carry potentially for the rest of your life. So they're saying that is not the way to proceed. We need to be spending those resources not on enforcement, but on educating people and about drug risks and treating people with drug-related problems.
So what do you say to the people that will say as soon as you decriminalise drugs, it sends out a message to people, and perhaps young people in particular, who might be more open to the message that it's OK to take drugs?
Well, I mean, using criminal law and the police and enforcement is actually a very expensive, blunt tool and an ineffective approach of educating young people. It's not what criminal law is for. If we want to educate young people about responsible lifestyle choices and healthy behaviours, you use public health education tools for that. And we're actually very good at that. Criminal law is expensive and ineffective. Public health education has a proven track record, and that's where we need to go.
OK, so the resources that the Home Office has used to chase the criminals, would that be adequate if it was transferred to the health service? Would the NHS be able to cope with the amount of treatment it would have to do if that was going to be the emphasis?
Well, I mean, at the moment
would it work like that anyway?
Well, I mean, it's quite difficult to just say police budgets would just get handed to the NHS. It's probably a little bit more complicated than that. But certainly, if you look at countries that have gone down this road, like Portugal, who did it in 2001, you do see that resources are moved from criminal justice to health. And the report also recommends that the lead brief on drugs would move from the Home Office to the Department of Health, which is also just sensible. I mean, drug use is primarily a public health issue and shouldn't be the role of an enforcement agency. It just doesn't make sense. We don't do that with other health issues. We don't criminalise people for other health risk behaviours.
And briefly, how good do you think that education is at present? Obviously, the emphasis in this is to boost the amount of education that people get on drugs. How much is there in schools at the moment? Do you think there is room for improvement?
Absolutely. I mean, the report shows very clearly that current spending on health and health provision and drug education in schools is woefully inadequate and certainly needs to be scaled up. So, yes, it's about a broader reorientation towards risk education and towards harm reduction and towards treatment and away from the failed punitive enforcement of the past.
OK, Steve Rolls, very interesting to get your views on this. Thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Now, time to talk sport. Let's take you over